Hello everybody, we've reached the last week of the month once again, and that means it's time for another monthly outlook. Today we'll be looking at the November 2019 weather outlook as far as temperatures and precipitation, as well as some snowfall possible also. So let's start off by looking at how October turned out. So as you can see, well below average temperatures were recorded in the north central plains, the northern Rockies, and also the northwestern U.S., with about average temperatures in the southwestern U.S., the central plains, and also the Great Lakes, and then above average temperatures in the southeast, south central plains, and also mid-Atlantic and Ohio Valley, with about average temperatures in the northeast. So that is how October turned out. Now we are going to move on to November. So we're slowly moving towards the more exciting part of the year, as most of you likely know. So first of all, we'll take a look at the teleconnections for the upcoming month. As you can see, the AO, this is only through the beginning of November, but it's currently expected to stay about neutral. The EPO, this is a good sign, negative EPO. So that means that we can continue with this amplified weather pattern we've been seeing, which will bring, these intense cold shots and also ridges for those east of the storm track. But, an amplified pattern is always exciting. It's always what you want to see in winter. You never really want to see a zonal flow pattern. That's just kind of boring for most of us. NAO, probably about neutral. Some signs that could go positive, but other models tend to disagree, so maybe neutral to even slightly negative for the NAO. The PNA, it's currently about neutral, maybe a little bit negative, and it'll be heading towards neutral. And we don't really care about the WPO. So finally, the MJO, I thought we mentioned this one. Currently, it's in phase 2, so it has been in relatively favorable phases, but it doesn't matter. Typically, we look at this more in the winter, but as we are heading into the winter, so November 8th, as you can see, by this time is expected to be around, or at least heading into phases 6 and 7, potentially 8. We will see where it goes after that. So that's some decent signs. At least it's not diving into phase 4, phase 5, these unfavorable phases for cold and an active storm track on the East Coast. Or I say the East Coast because I'm so used to saying that, but the northern plains, the central plains, most of the central and eastern U.S. So let's look at the Euro Ensemble member for temperatures in November. So as you can see, we will have a storm that carves up the Midwest around Halloween, which will be mainly rain, although there could be some snow, potentially just depending on how intense precip gets or which model wins out. But there are some signs of some snow maybe in the upper Great Lakes area. So there will be, though, a potent cold shot behind that to start off the month of November. As you can see, just similar to what we've been seeing recently, it kind of weakens as it moves east, but it still will be relatively below average in the East Coast, temperature-wise, in the early parts of November. And then there's a chance that we could have a few warm days around November 7th or maybe the 8th in much of the eastern U.S., but then we'll likely have another just as intense trough dropping into the northern plains, and this will make its way east. So let's look at the GFS for further illustration of this. So as you can see, there's that storm around Halloween. This should be, might put a damper on things, unfortunately, for many of the kids out there, but for us in the weather community, it's kind of exciting, especially if we do see some snow break out in parts of the Midwest. Euro is definitely on the snowier side of things. It kind of gives Wisconsin, Michigan, even parts of Iowa and Illinois some snow, but we'll monitor that in the coming days and let you know what happens. And then there's that cold shot behind it, but I want to go out to North America so you can see just this pattern of what we're going to be seeing. So, okay, so you see this trough build out, but we do have a lot of cold air behind it too. So that comes in November 7th, and then we have another low-pressure system. Now, this is forever out, I don't really like to trust. Obviously, nobody should really trust models at 10 days, or, 12 days out, 13 days out, 14 days out, even 7 days out, really. But as far as the pattern, it's a good illustration of what we'll probably be seeing, which is, it's really typical of fall to see storms cut up the Midwest and into the Great Lakes. So if you're sitting on the East Coast, and wondering, all these cutters through the Midwest, is this how going to be the winter? Is this going to be how the winter goes? No, probably not. This is really typical. of the fall. We just often see these cutters in the Midwest and things like that, and then these cold shots behind it. So as you can see, this is around November 7th. That's what I mentioned, some potential warmth, but then we do have another cold shot behind that. And as you can see, this was the source right around central Canada from where that shot came from. And then after that, another potential cold shot. But this is a while out. We'll keep an eye on things, but that's what the models look like for now. So it looks like at least early November we'll be starting off fairly below average temperature-wise, especially in the central plains and the northern plains, probably well below average. And then you can see the core of the cold air, just typical, once again in the northern plains and Great Lakes, heading into mid-November. So this is a while out, but if we look at GFS or GEFS, it's a pretty similar story. Now this is more reliable just because you have 52 ensembles. Pretty sure it's still 52. Might be more now, but it's a similar pattern where we have the core of cold air in the northern plains, and then it's spreading east, but not as intense. So now is your favorite time of the video. Now we get to look at actual maps, or actual forecast maps. So here we go with our November 2019 weather forecast here at US Weather Action. Just to let you know, we do ask that you guys subscribe if you are interested in this type of content. It would greatly help our channel. In the coming months, we will continue to provide this type of content during the winter, so it would be a good idea for you guys to subscribe. We'd obviously appreciate it a lot. But without further ado, let's get into the precipitation outlook. So we will have some relief on the East Coast. We will probably put a nail into this drought, and that should be really the end of it, just if we do see these type of anomalies this upcoming month. And where does this come from? Well, we're going to see these low pressure systems come down the spine of the Rockies with some relatively light to moderate snow sometimes in Denver and the Eastern Rocky mountains. And then it will hit this is typical. You pretty much have a completely different pattern on the West Coast and the East Coast. But anyways, then we'll have a low pressure in the South Central Plains. It'll strengthen like crazy because it'll have a lot more moisture to deal with. And then it'll go up through the Midwest. And, despite these areas mainly being rain, especially in the Northeast, rain, precipitation, it's pretty much all the same thing in November. So that's where we're getting this above average precip in the Ohio Valley and western parts of the Northeast and also Great Lakes. And then we have below average precipitation out west. Unfortunately, this might lead to the continuation of some wildfires out there, unfortunately, but it's kind of a typical thing that we see in the fall. I keep saying typical, but and then we have our below average precipitation. This is slightly below average precip, so it won't be too noticeable, but that's in the northern plains, just because this is really the core of the cold air, like we were saying earlier, so we're not going to really have too much precip to deal with in this area. And with storms, for the most part, cutting near east, they're just not going to see too much precip up there in the northern plains. So now let's get into temperatures. So this map does look relatively cold. Might be a good sign for a lot of you, and maybe the opposite for some. But it's only November. We're not going to be seeing too crazy, but with that said, in the northern plains, it can get pretty cold even in November. Even the central plains, when you see temperatures 25 degrees below average for even a few days, first of all, that's going to throw off the anomalies like crazy for the month. So that's really what's, boosting these below average temps that we have on the map here. But also, even that can be 25, 30 degrees, 35 degrees, even as highs, depending on the area. So, well below average temperatures in the northern plains, the northeastern, that doesn't really sound right, the northern Rockies in the U.S., and then the western Great Lakes. This is well below average temperatures because, as we looked at earlier, the troughing will really, dig down right into the northern plains. So this is where we really expect this area of most below average temperatures, and then slightly to perhaps just slightly below average temperatures. Especially this is our really area of uncertainty, just because typically troughs like to go down the eastern spine of the Rockies, and the western spine can be completely the opposite. So for now we have below average temps, maybe slightly below average temps, and then this spreads into the east, just because, as we discussed earlier, it's not going to be as potent as it will be up here, but we still expect, for the most part, more days than not to be on the colder side compared to normal. And then we have our area of average temperatures. This is an area where a lot of you might disagree, but as we saw in this past month, we had so many cold shots coming to the northern Rockies and northern plains, but they just fizzled out by the time they made it to the East Coast, and these areas ended up being 3-4 degrees above average. Now, I think it'll be a little bit colder this November or this month, and also the shots will obviously be able to make their way a little bit more south just as we head in the winter, but about average temperatures of what we're looking at right now. It's still going to be a month of swings in this area, no doubt, but we'll have to see how late November goes, especially because obviously that's the time of most uncertainty. And then we have our area of above average temperatures on the west coast, south central plains, southeast, southwest. We expect you guys to start off a little bit below average to start the month, but by the time the mid-month comes, that should flip at least. At least that's what most data are suggesting. So that has been the November 2019 weather outlook here at US Weather Action. We greatly appreciate you guys watching and dropping by, and if you are interested, once again, feel free to subscribe to the channel for more updates. Thank you, everybody, and have a good day.